Well, hey there, everyone, and welcome back to camp here at Cowboy Survival. It's just rained. The air is a little cooler than it's been most of the week, that's for sure. And I've got the camp set up. I've got my fire going because in my stove I'm going to cook me something in a little while. But I'm going to let this fire burn down. Where I've got some coals in there in this little stove that'll help me boil some water. But I also want to think about tomorrow's meal. And one of the meals we might want to take with us on the trail is some dried beans. So we're going to talk about tonight, how do you cook dried beans when you're on the trail? So hang on and we're going to get right into it. So what we're going to look at cooking is some dried lima beans. And I've got about a 1 pound bag of dried lima beans here that I put in my backpack. And we're going to look at how to cook these. Now the thing about dried beans is you don't have to soak them before you cook them. The problem is if you don't soak them, it's going to take about 3 hours to cook them. And over a stove like this, 3 hours of cooking means a lot of stoking and a lot of just continuing to find wood to feed this thing with to keep it going for 3 hours. Now, if you have a bigger fire, obviously you can get better coals with bigger pieces of wood, and you can probably cook for 3 hours easily with beans. But if you soak these, they're going to be able to be cooked in about an hour or maybe a little less. So that's what we're going to do tonight, is we're going to take a look at how we do these beans. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to soak these beans. Now I'm assuming a couple of things. First of all, I'm assuming that you've got something to soak them in. I'm also assuming that you have got a supply of water so you can replenish the water that it's going to take, because you're going to put these in about 16 ounces of water. I'm going to put a half a cup of beans in a 16 ounce pot of water and let them soak overnight, and then tomorrow they'll be ready for me to cook. But right now they're not ready, and so I'm going to have to use that water. So whatever water I use, I'm going to want to be able to replenish it, because then I'm going to have to use some water to cook them in as well. So let's see what we're going to do first. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get out my pot that I'm going to use, and I'm going to use my little Stanley cook pot for this. And so I take the lid off, and I'm going to put my beans in. Now this can serve two purposes. First of all, I can cover this overnight so that nothing gets into the beans while I am cooking them. I'm going to put some more wood in this little cooker here, so I can work on this overnight. Let's throw. The other thing is when I get done, before I cook them, I'm going to want to drain the water out of these before I put water in to cook them in. And so, having this cooktop on this Stanley, I'm able to take this and drain out the excess water. Now I may want to save that water. I can use it for a number of things. I can use it to wash my hands. I can use it to maybe wash dishes. I can use it to put out my fire before I leave the campsite. You always want to make sure your fire is out good before you leave a campsite. So there's a lot of things you can do with that water, so I wouldn't necessarily just throw it away, but you can refilter it and drink it again, I guess, if you wanted to. But you're going to want to spill that. You want to drain those beans before you cook them. And so this top can be used for that. Now I'm going to put in about a half a cup of beans. That's really 2 servings, but I like lima beans, so I'm going to put a lot in there. And so for me, a half a cup is going to be about 3 palmfuls of beans. So this is a palmful of beans for me. And I've measured this out, and this is going to be, if I do 3 of these, that's about a half a cup. So I'm going to put those in there. I'm going to put another small handful and a third small handful. Again, it's about a palmful. So I'll put those beans in there. I'll seal these up, put them back in my backpack. This 1 pound bag of beans is going to provide me several meals. Beans, particularly lima beans, have a lot of protein in them, so are really good food to eat. And it tastes really good because you're cooking something fresh over the fire, and man, it's just something that's going to taste really, really good to you. Now, the next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to take some water. Now, I've got my Nalgene full of water. I also have an extra bottle of water. Now, I don't need to use all of this. Usually, if you had a full cup of beans, you'd use 3 cups of water. But I've only got half a cup of beans, so I need about a cup and a half of water. So that's going to be about 12 ounces, and I can look on my cup and I can see that my 12-ounce mark is right about here. So on the inside, I'm going to fill it up to that second mark on the inside of the canister. So I'll just fill that water up to that second mark. Now I'm going to also add to this some salt and pepper. Now you can add it when you're cooking it, but I like adding it now so that I got to find my salt and pepper. I like going ahead and adding it at this point because I've got to find it here. What did I do with my salt and pepper? A whole bunch of salt and pepper in here. There it is. So I think when you add it into the soaking water, it's going to allow that to do better. Now, if that's the case, you're probably not going to want to drink this water afterwards. It's not going to taste very good, but it can certainly be used. Again, it's only 12 ounces, and a lot of that's going to be absorbed by the beans. But a lot of it, you can go ahead and use this water, save it in a separate canister or whatever, and use it to put your fire out when you get ready to break camp after you eat. So I put in my salt. Now I put in a couple things of pepper, and I may salt and pepper it later to taste. Now I'm going to let these beans sit overnight, and those beans are going to be nice and moist by morning, ready for me to cook. Now the other thing I want to think about is how I'm going to cook these. I could cook them in water. Alternatively, I'm going to cook these. I've got some chicken bouillon, and I'm going to put some chicken bouillon in some water and make up sort of a chicken broth that I'm going to cook these beans in. I think it's going to gives the beans a whole lot more flavor than just cooking them in water. So I'll do that. When I do this tomorrow and I cook these, I'm going to cook these in this water with some chicken bouillon cubes mixed in to create that chicken broth. I think it's going to really, really taste good. So we're going to get ready and go to bed now, but our beans are going to soak overnight, and tomorrow we're going to cook them. Okay, so we're back. I soaked the beans overnight, and it's now just about time to cook them. I'm right now working on my fire. I'm getting it ready. It's getting closer. You can see it's burning really well. What I need to do at this point is I really need to, first of all, get the sticks down below the top level of this, and they're almost there. And then what I'm going to need to do is I'm going to need to make sure I've got some good coals in this fire, so that I can cook for, as I feed it, I can continue to cook for about an hour. So the beans are here in this pot, and they have swelled up considerably. Let's see, I don't know if we can show this. We're going to try to show this on the video. I don't know if you can see the beans in there, but they have swelled up significantly from last night. So now I'm going to put my pot lid on. You notice my pot lid has got some holes in it, and I'm just going to drain this water off. So you can see that I've got the beans now. They've been soaked overnight. I'm going to add some more water to this, enough to cover these beans. And I've got a little left in my bottle from last night. I'm going to add just a tad bit more to this from my Nalgene. So I've got about 12 ounces in there, I guess. Now I'm also going to take this water and I'm going to splash it up against the sides because I have a lot of salt and pepper on the sides of this can I want to get into there. Now I'm going to add to this just a little bit of chicken powder for making bouillon. Now, you don't want to add much. You want to add about a teaspoon. So I'm just going to put some in there. Now, the important thing to remember about this stuff is that if it gets moisture at all inside this jar, the whole thing turns to a big solid lump. So you don't really want that. So normally what I would suggest doing is take some of this, put it in little teaspoon amounts or tablespoon amounts, put it in some Ziploc baggies and take those with you rather than take this. That way each baggie will be individual. If one baggie gets wet, the other ones will not. So my fire's doing well. I need to add a little bit more wood to it. Remember, I'm trying to make some coals that I can cook with. So I'm going to add some of this, and I'm just going to add this by sort of, what's it? I'm going to pour a little bit in my hand to represent about a teaspoon. It's about that much. That's all I'm going to add. I'm going to put that in my water, and that's going to flavor my beans, I think, very nicely. I don't have butter with me, and for those of you who know me well, you know I generally don't use butter. So I'm going to stir this up, and I'm going to add some more salt and pepper to this. One of the keys to good beans is adding lots of salt and pepper. So I'm definitely going to add some more pepper and maybe add a little bit more salt. If I've got much pepper left, I do. I'm going to put the lid back on this to cook it. I'm going to stir those beans up just a little bit. And then we're going to cook those beans. And so when I come back, it'll be just about done. So my pot is doing so well that it just overflowed. So I'm going to stir it a little bit. And I'm going to let that fire die down just a little bit so those beans can cook at a lower temperature. So they should take about an hour. And, at this low heat that I'm cooking them on, what I've got to watch is that I don't want them to boil over. I also don't want all the water to boil out of them. And as it turns out, it's starting to boil over again. So what I've got to do is let this die down some. But it's doing well. Now, a neat trick, if you don't want it to boil over, the neat trick is to lay something across the top of it, like a stick of wood. That'll break the tension, and it'll keep it from actually boiling over. And if that happens, it could, of course, burn your fire out. So it looks really good. I've got lots of salt and pepper in there in the froth, so that means that the beans are getting seasoned well. I'm going to stir it a little bit more. I'm going to keep cooking those things until they are done. The problem with a camp stove like this is that it's going to be very difficult to regulate the heat. If you have a gas stove, that's going to be much easier to regulate the heat. The problem with those it's going to use a lot of your gas fuel if you're going to cook for an hour. So using a organic fuel like wood is going to mean you've got a constant fuel source. The key is to learn how to build your fire so that it doesn't get too hot. Mine got a little too hot, and so I need a little more practice with this stove so I can get it at the low temperature that I need it to be at in order to actually cook. Now, it seems to be at a good temperature right now, particularly if I continue to stir it. So my beans have started to boil. They're boiling really well in the water. I can look in it and see there's a rolling boil going on in there. And as a matter of fact, I think I will get my phone out and I will film that so that you guys can see how these beans are boiling. They've been cooking for about 10 minutes. They've got a long way to go. The key is going to be to get my temperature lower so that now instead of boiling, they can simmer for about an hour or so until they are done. So let me go ahead and get this here so that you guys can see this on the video. As you can see, those beans are rolling very well. They're cooking in that basically chicken broth. And in addition, they've got lots of salt and pepper in them. I think these are going to end up being really, really good beans. But they've got to still absorb a lot of water and do a lot of cooking before they're ready to eat. So we'll come back in a few minutes and see what they look like. Well, okay, the beans have been cooking for about an hour, maybe a little less, probably less than an hour. So we're going to give them a try and see how they taste at this point. There we go. Let's see. Not quite done, but they're tasting pretty good. Still got a little ways to go. So let's just watch them for a while. Okay, so I think they're done. We don't want to cook them anymore because they're starting to burn to the bottom of the container, so that's not good. So let's see what we've got here in the way of our beans. Take a taste of our lima beans cooked over an open fire. Oh man, those are so good. So there you have it. About a half a cup of lima beans, dried beans, soaked overnight, actually about 20 hours probably, then cooked over an open flame for a little over an hour. You could probably cook them a little more if you'd add a little more water. I'd run out of water. There's no more water left in this. But they're really good. Lots of salt and pepper. I added some chicken broth in there to give it some flavor. I'm telling you, these are really good. Man. Good meal for the trail. Lots of protein, fresh food, not canned, not freeze-dried. Good stuff. Well, I think that was a good lesson. Remember what we always say on this channel. Stay strong, stay prepared, have a blessed day, and we'll see you real soon on Cowboy Survival.